evil, Satan, the kingdom of darkness, however you want to describe that, tried to stop the revolution by killing Jesus, and it backfired terribly. He then tried it again by killing all of the apostles. It backfired. He kept trying it for a while, and then he realized, I can't stop this thing. So here's what I'm going to do. My next move is I'm going to create a brilliant counterfeit, and I'm going to warehouse millions of people in religion, but they have no experience of God.
Okay, everybody, welcome to 10,000 Minute Podcast.
I'm sorry, Tim. I think you were trying to say something, but
I can't quite hear you.
I think there's construction happening outside.
Here you go,
So,
sir.
yeah,
Sir.
thank you so much, Chris.
Oh, no, never mind. It's just
my
Chris.
name's Tim Timmons.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Amoy.
You always call me Chris.
So, guys, Chris Cleveland is over here, and
Just
he
being
is
a servant.
Acts of service, his love language.
He did just spill his drink on the floor, but then he got me a cup of water,
I did. You're welcome.
and it sounded like we were in a construction zone.
For a little bit, but yeah.
So we're sponsored by Costco water,
Okay.
whatever that thing is. We're not really.
Is that
but
why it
it's-
sounds that way?
No, it's empty, and it's got a little red light, and I just...
Oh.
That's
Okay.
okay. Also,
Okay.
hi everybody. I'm Moy. Just wanted to throw
it
that
out
in
there.
there.
Okay, we've got a great...
Oh my
I just say that
gosh.
every time. It feels a little cliche and stupid.
But this one.
But it's not, because what has been our mission? To find intentional conversations with people who know things. And so all these conversations are great.
Yep.
Yep.
We want them to be great for you
And
guys.
this one's really great. So I remember when I was younger,
Yeah.
there's a book that came out called Wild at Heart.
Yep.
And it was really a profound book for so many people. And so many people's lives were changed in so many different ways. And some people have agreed and disagreed through the years. And I was really excited to have this same author on our podcast.
Yeah, I was geeking out.
Yeah, we kind of geeked out. So John Eldredge, people, he's an author. And I had somebody yesterday on an airplane say something about the author John Eldredge, and I said, well, we're kind of friends. We just had him on our podcast.
For
Don't worry
sure.
about
No, I didn't really. But they were talking about how profound this new book is. So, anywho, you guys, you're going to love this episode so much. And if you don't, that's fine too. But
Right.
there's something to learn here. So whether you agree with all this stuff or not, there's some profound nuggets in here.
Yeah.
Jewels, gems. So, anyways, you have anything to say before we go?
I liked it.
I mean, that's all you can really say about it. We liked it.
Okay. So tune into your heart with John Eldredge. Here we go. Everybody, welcome to another 10,000 Minute podcast. I always want to say experiment.
I know. That's
Season
who we used
2.
to be.
That
It's
was
hard
season
to let
1.
go of who we used to be.
Season 2 now.
Gosh.
Move on.
Let's move on. Is that what it says?
Yeah, let's move on. Let's get it together.
My name's Tim Timmons, and we've got Chris Cleveland over here to the left,
Oh, hey, guys.
or your right if you're watching video. John, to your right. He's probably on your right, isn't he?
I see him on my right.
Gosh. That is so correct in a lot of ways. And then we've got Amoy Donice over here.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
And then we got George in the room, and George has been saying a lot of inappropriate words today, so I feel like we're trying to really calm
I've
him
heard
down.
him say 3 words
Yeah.
at least today.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
not
They've
true,
all been
everybody.
wrong.
It's not true, but it's funny just to make fun of George in that way. Everybody, we have Mr. John Eldredge on with us.
Ooh, exciting.
Good to have you on, John.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm looking forward to this. You are characters.
Yeah.
So everybody, let me just give you a little
That's
just 'cause
actually a good
I enjoy
representation.
reading people. So we first got on. John doesn't know us from crap. I mean, poor guy. And I'm me, and so I'm talking a lot, being however I am. And John has just been sitting here, kind of quiet, just observing, going, "Who are these humans? What are they doing?" So I'm excited that you don't know what you're getting into, John.
Yeah, the quietness is also respect. Like, this is your gig, and I want to get to know you a little bit. And so, yeah, man, this. You're in the lead here.
I'm
a
already
perspective
shaking.
shift already.
I already want to
perspective shift
cry.
already.
I feel seen. Where are the tissues?
Again, I think we're done. I think we've just had our podcast. No, there's a lot to learn. That's
awesome.
That's helpful. Well, let me just you can keep doing wise things, or you can then just start talking and jumping in and being a dork with us if you have any desire.
Oh, listen, get me going. Toss me a couple low and slow over the plate.
Yeah. Is that how it works? Well, I'm looking at your background because we also do a little, this will be on the YouTubes as well. It's a internet site.
This internet.
Gosh, I've got so many questions about what's going on in the background.
Is that a deer
Go for
antler?
Yeah,
Deer
that's an elk. Yeah,
Elk?
it's a
Yeah.
6-point elk antler. Yeah.
That'd be a big deer.
Yeah, well, like a Kansas deer.
Wow.
And then is that camouflage, that door?
No, you know what that is? That's a cork board. It's like authentic cork.
Whoa.
And I use it for a couple reasons, but here's a cool thing. Did you know that cork actually purifies the room?
No.
In what way?
Yeah, it's antimicrobial. It's got all these amazing.
In a literal way.
Yeah.
How else do you think you would do
I
that?
don't know if we were
diving
getting
into
like
metaphors
spiritual
already,
or something.
Well, yeah, that's way too esoteric.
But we can go there.
It's like nature's air freshener.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what cork is.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
What does cork come? I mean, I know the answer. I just don't think I'm asking for a friend. What does cork come from?
Right? From oak trees.
Okay. Yep. See, I knew that. You guys, you probably didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't actually know that.
No, it's good to
From
practice trivia questions.
oak trees.
Yeah, it's a growth that takes place on oak trees, right? Really difficult to harvest, and it's an amazing product. That's why they used to use it to cork wine bottles because it would preserve the wine.
Wow.
Is it coming? I mean, gosh, now I'm thinking a whole lot.
No, I'm shook.
Let's just ask some questions that have nothing to do with
Yeah.
why we're here.
Okay. So, do you have a lot of oak trees with cork growing on them wild in Colorado? Because that's where you live, correct?
Nah, no. This is pine trees. No, but I like the beauty of it. And then, I do use it when I'm in a writing project. I'll stick little notes on there and kind of I'll do a conceptual version of a book before I write the book.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Okay. And then the other side, you've just got books and just stuff.
Yeah. Broadswords, things like that.
Yeah, that's a legit
That is a
sword.
broadsword.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah.
He's got a sword collection. Did you kill the elk with the sword?
This is valid.
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Not yet. That would be a first. I don't know that that's been done in this century.
Wild at heart, gone camping. Gone hunting.
Outdoors.
In the wild at heart.
Yeah.
2 books together. Well, anyways.
We have a lot of
good
good jokes, John,
Yeah.
so just keep sticking close. Okay, so this is the 10,000 minute podcast. Hopefully it won't go that long. But we're trying to figure out how do we practice the way in the heart of Jesus and join Jesus in the 10,000 minutes of our week, not just in the time that we gather as the church, but as we're scattering as a church, what does it look like for us to actually represent the heart of Jesus that's actually being transformed in us? And what's that, when Jesus says, whoever hears my words and puts them into practice all week long, you're wise. It's like building your house on a rock. If not, it's just kind of foolish. So that's really the heart behind this. And so we are actually 3 just curious people, trying to talk to people that know some stuff and are fellow learners, hopefully fellow learners. And not everybody that we talk to are fellow learners. I think some people feel like I've got it all figured out, and that's fine. You seem like a learner to me in what I've read and watched over the years, and I really appreciate that in you.
Yes. Well, here you go. You want the visual. All these books on the floor here. Yeah. I'm trying.
That's the dream.
Yeah.
Just be
Have those
surrounded
been
by
read,
books.
or are they the to be read pile?
Yeah. It's both. It's
Okay.
halfway, partway, curious.
Love it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Okay, from all things, from all kinds of authors, are you?
Oh, yeah, exactly. Everything. History, natural science. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So have you always been curious?
Yes. Always. Yeah, it was fascinating. My family, I grew up kind of in a typical like suburban American household, and it was TV, right? That's what they did at night. And I couldn't watch it. I have not watched TV ever since I was a child. I'm just not interested in it. And so like people are like, oh, the Brady Bunch, remember? I literally have never seen it.
Yeah.
But I'm curious. So I like to read and I like to get outside. I like to watch movies. I like to travel. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm particularly curious about the human heart. So I'm a therapist and I love listening to people's stories, love getting into like the rhythms of the human heart.
Are there certain rhythms that you see all the time? I love asking therapists, just what do you learn about people? You're sitting with people all the time. What are some like major themes that you see in humanity that are just,
Yeah. Profound longing and a very impressive capacity for denial.
Wow.
Okay.
Right? I mean,
say that one more time.
Oh, goodness.
Profound longing, because the human heart is just made up of longing, right? It's not that we have desire. We are desire, right? But also this phenomenal capacity to live in denial, to just deny the impact of your story on your life, deny the reality of the world that you're living in. Okay, so for example, we just been through 2 years of global trauma.
Yeah, yeah.
Global trauma, okay? But what now everybody's doing is, hey, we're good. We're back. We're fine.
Right. Right.
No impact here. I'm cruising. And you're like, folks, you have not yet paid the bill for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's that kind of thing. Like, wow.
Yeah, well, and that's your book. I mean, just to jump into it, which is we have so many questions about this, but Resilient is your book.
Yep.
So restoring your weary soul in these turbulent times. What we loved about this as we were just reading through your stuff, all the stuff that you probably didn't write, but somebody else wrote. You're giving a practical guide to recovery and resilience, deeply grounded in God. So we are all about the practices. What are practices that you see that people are doing? I mean, you just said kind of denial, but what are practices that you see people doing that are actually hurting them more than helping them?
Well, okay. So
we'll get into what's helping them, but what's underneath the thing that's underneath it,
Yeah. So on the self-destructive behaviors, it's your pace of life, just a totally unconsidered pace of life. There's no soul room. There's no breathing room. There's no margin. They just go. Pace of life is killing people. No opportunity to express their emotions, right? So suppression of emotion. I'm fine. That's killing people. And then all your self-soothing behaviors, right? Like what do you do for comfort? If you don't get real comfort, what do you do for comfort, right? So our addictions and the stuff that we get trapped in. And I'm not just talking about like the hardcore, narcotics or sexual stuff, but just all the things you do. What are your self-comforting behaviors? Because most of them don't work. Binge watching Netflix does not restore the soul. So it's like, it's that sort of thing.
So funny. That comes up in a lot of the podcasts.
Yeah.
People talk, that specifically, that seems like a thing, the whole binge watching. We just have a lot of people that talk about that, use that as an example of something that's not good for the soul.
Right.
And yet, back to your first point, we all kind of still, not all of us, you don't, but other humans do, we just keep going back to something that it's like, I know this isn't restoring. That's addiction. That's all the things. It's like, I know this isn't restoring for my soul. So then why do we keep going back to things like that? Like what's underneath in and of itself, watching a movie on Netflix is not a bad inherent thing. So what's underneath the thing that's underneath the thing?
Yeah. Well, what is it that you're looking for? What are you trying to assuage? What's upset? what's angry, what's hurt,
Yeah.
what feels betrayed in you, that it is an outlet just for some soothing. Like, why do you go there? We never stop to ask ourselves, why do I do this?
Yeah.
Why do I do anything that I do in my life? Right? And what am I seeking behind it? There, the approval of others. Why do I do that? Well, I don't feel loved.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay. Well, now we're into some really good stuff, right?
Yeah.
And why are people not asking those questions to themselves? Is that out of fear, time, permission? I feel like I see it a lot around with friends where I'm like, take time alone to do the work or and it's just the last thing they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it that it's hard to take a moment to validate yourself in the question?
I think you're right, Mo. I think people are afraid of what they'll find. I think they fear that they will be overwhelmed if they open that closet. Right? That it's just going to be too much. If I go down that rabbit hole, I will never get out. Particularly with grief. One of the most draining things on the human soul is ungrieved grief. It's in there, it's weighing your soul down, but people are afraid if I go down that rabbit hole, I'll never come out. I'll always be sad. And that's not true, but that's why, it's the fear of what is going to happen if I actually feel what I'm feeling, if I face my loneliness, if I face how disappointing my work is.
Yeah. Gosh, it's dear listener, what is that for you? I mean, what would that look like for you? Why do you stop? I mean, I'm thinking that's totally me in a lot of ways. I mean, there's so many different ways that I do that, and times that I do that, but it really is, gosh, I keep coming up against the same thing and I'm tired of it. And it's like, I don't know the reprieve. I don't know what that reprieve looks like. So I'm going to just bolt for a bit. I just want to bolt for a bit.
Yeah.
What's the difference between finding soul space, like you mentioned, and disappearing? Like, what's the balance between like finding time for yourself, and just bailing?
Well, you just named it. You used the word disappearing because in one of those practices you are present, and in the other practice you are gone.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like you are literally not present. You're not present to yourself or anybody else in the room. So it's that. It would be the ability to be present, and you guys love God. The ability to be present to God in those things, in your unhappiness, in your disappointment, in your fear.
What does that look like? How do you do that?
So one of the wildest things a person can do is to love God in their suffering. And let me explain why. Because you burn your hand on the stove, you pull back. And this, by the way, this is like a really serious global phenomenon. Well, I'll explain that if you want. But right now, disappointment, trauma, heartache, and what I would call serial disappointment, chronic disappointment, has caused people to pull back from God. And the soul shrinks in like a sea anemone. And one of the ways that gets you out of that loop, out of that hard place, is you actually enter your suffering and start loving God from that place. Because it allows the soul to open back up to his presence. And then good things can happen, right? Then actual communion can take place and comfort and solace. But we disappear, to go back to your word. Instead, we just, we check out, we dissociate.
Can you give an example of how that would go? Because that all sounded wonderful and I'm nodding going, oh, that sounds really great. But I don't know what that looks like. So to engage God, I forget exactly how you said that, in the midst of sorrow.
Love God in your suffering. Yes.
Your suffering.
Okay.
So give practical story of.
Yeah. So we we have some heartache going on in our family right now where some of our we have adult children, they're married, they have families.
Yep.
And one of the siblings is really pulling away from all the others. And they used to be really close.
Yeah.
They're pulling away from us for reasons that, frankly, they haven't explained to us yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Didn't show up for Easter, don't want to come for Christmas, all that stuff. And don't want to, family vacation together, no hanging out. Okay, so that is heartbreaking.
Sorry, John. Yeah.
And so rather than just going, whatever, I enter that and I experience my heartache. I go, you know what? I am really grieving that. That is so freaking sad.
Yeah.
Okay, in that place, so I'm not disappearing, I am showing up to the suffering. And in that place, they say, but you know what, Jesus, I actually do love you. I actually do love you. I'm not trying to fix it. I'm not even trying to understand it. I just begin with, but I actually do love you. And what it allows my soul that's done this and the pain that's enclosed in, it's gone clamshell in the pain, it allows my soul to open back up to the presence of Jesus in my life. Does that help? Does that guide you?
I think so. I mean, I hear that pain, and I will say it again. I'm so sorry. I mean, that is just, it's crazy that is such a normal thing that's going on right now. And as a parent, I can't even imagine that with my humans that you've shaped for all these years. And so sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
In that, I'm trying to, so you're just saying, in a sense, God, I do love you. So what does that, what does it look like? What does love look like? Like, I'm real practical. I'm not the brightest of all of these humans in this room, but I'm really going, what does that practically look like? I know that you're saying, God, I love you in the midst of this. I know I'm missing it. So just say it again in another way.
What do you give your affection to? What has your delight? There are things that you have affection and delight for, right? And it might be music. It might be the lake house, right? It might be your road bike, but you have affection and delight in those things. You love those things.
Yeah.
They get your affection, right? And so I put my affection in God. I actually delight. I love God. I really do. And I have a very deep, rich friendship with God. And so when I'm hurt, it can feel like you didn't do anything about that.
Yeah.
You are not helping. You are not intervening, right? And I can feel betrayed. I just go, that's not true. That is not true of you. I don't get this situation. I don't like it. But God, you still have my affection and you still have my delight.
When I think about deep, rich friendships, I think of like a reciprocal communication. And so I see, like in that scenario, you telling God this. What are you feeling? What are you getting, I think, in return in that friendship?
Yeah. Well, okay. So like, gosh, we could go off into one of the great losses of Christian spirituality in this century is the ability to hear the voice of God. It's a practice that was known to the saints down through the centuries. You read any of the Desert Fathers, you read Teresa of Avila, you read St. John of the Cross. I mean, these folks heard God. A.W. Tozier, C.S. Lewis, Dallas Willard. You know, what I get in that moment, I hear him. I hear his voice. He speaks to me. Now, he doesn't always speak to me the answer to the immediate problem. But guys, there were two trees in the garden. It's the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. We chose the wrong tree. We think that answers are going to solve things when what we need is life.
So it's intentionally, like, if there's a practice, just a practice, it's intentionally saying, gosh, all day long, what are the things of tree of knowledge that I'm really I just choose?
Totally.
that have my attention. And we talk a lot about one of the breathing prayers we do a lot with 10,000 Minutes is just breathing in Jesus.
Yes.
Breathing out, you have my attention. And
Yes.
there's a different one that I'm hearing from you. It's almost, it's because I think in suffering, I understand the bottom of it as contentment, this like deep contentment. But what I'm learning and just kind of gathering is there's also this other piece of like, yes, there's contentment and just, okay, God, you're at work in all things, but there's also Jesus, you have my affection. Like
Yes.
affection and attention are similar in the same area, but they're actually different.
You vary.
That's
Yes,
powerful.
that's right. You have my affection.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I experience yours. We have a rich, loving relationship.
What do you say to people who would be, because I think a lot of our listeners are people also that are like, nope, I don't hear voice of God. I heard all you Christian people talk about that a long time. Like I should have heard it and I didn't hear crap. So help me out here.
Yes.
How do you help people in those places?
Yep.
Or how do you steer them?
Couple thoughts. One, you could ask, what's in the way? What's in the way? I'll bet it is some form of disappointment.
Totally.
Yeah. What's in the way? Right. But also because most folks, when they try the practice of hearing the voice of God, they start with double black diamonds. They start with huge stuff. Can I quit my job? Can I move, to Dallas? Is this a girl you want me to marry? Like guys, like there's way too much drama.
Yeah.
You can't hear the voice of God when there's high drama. You can't. The soul, this doesn't work. You can get there as you grow in the practice, but you can't start with that stuff. But most people do. They say, well, I tried, I asked, why did my mom die of cancer? And he didn't answer me. I'm like, that is like trying to play Mozart and you've never even played the piano. You can't start there. You have to start with very, very simple questions to begin to learn.
Isn't that where most people start to ask that question, though? Is the middle of crap? It's like,
I know.
It's in the middle of it. It's like, I want.
I know.
When,
but I'm just telling you, it doesn't work. And it's frustrating.
Yeah.
And then people stop. They say, well, I guess I just don't hear the voice
Didn't
of God.
work.
You go, whoa, time out. Let's reboot this.
Huh.
Why don't you practice that in much smaller ways? Something that does not have drama to it.
Like?
Well, like, Lord, is this a good weekend to have that camping trip? Should we go this weekend or should we wait? Something simple like that. And he'll go, nah, wait. You go, oh, okay. And then it rains that weekend. And you're like, thank you. Little things that you get affirmation in, small
What's
stuff.
the difference between like intuition and discernment and maybe you just got lucky with the weather?
Choose something you couldn't have known, right? Choose something you couldn't have known. Because you can have a hunch about things.
I've always wondered this. I've been in the church my whole life. And never felt like I've ever heard the voice of God ever. And maybe got to a point where I thought, I don't know if God cares about all this stuff. Like I think maybe he's just like given me a, like kind of a broad canvas to paint on. And it's like, well, choose your colors and I'll be with you no matter what you draw. And that's kind of how I've approached life. And so the way you're kind of describing it's like, oh, actually this is maybe a little off of where we were going to go.
We're doing
but
great. There's
now I'm like, oh, I can practice hearing the voice of God. I'm like, I get really initially skeptical. I'm like, well, I don't know. I've been doing it a long time. And I've been praying to God for a long time and in different ways as I've gotten older. And sometimes in, good ways and bad ways and simple ways and hard ways. And and I've still never heard the voice of God. And so maybe I'm just thinking through it and what that
or
could
maybe
look like,
it's possible that you have and
Yeah.
you've reasoned it away.
which very could be, yeah, because I
Yeah.
am that person for sure.
Yeah.
And I wonder, how do you, well, even that brings up the question. It's like, well, is it my reasoning? Am I reasoning the voice of God into existence as well as I could reason it out? So
Hey,
now I'm thinking.
Yeah, I've got to back up for a moment. You just said, I've never heard the voice of God in my life. And honestly, I could start weeping. Like that is a very serious thing you just said. And a source of real disappointment and sorrow. Like, that's not okay by me. That's not okay for you. Like, I don't want to sit here and just let that go by.
Yeah.
Like, there are reasons. Something's in the way. Okay. And the first thing that's in that way, like, I've been in church all my life. Well, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that'll do it. That will fill you with so much religion that you cannot experience God. Okay, so that'd be in the way. Another thing that's in the way is your desire to figure it out. We are all talking right now because we are beings that are made to communicate, right? And if we got on this podcast and nobody said anything, it'd be a really short podcast, you know, and you wouldn't have any listeners. Like the idea of communication is at the core of what it means to be human. Okay, because that's what God's like. He is a communicating. He's a person. He has a personality. He has a sense of humor. He's ironic. He's sarcastic. He's playful. He's dead serious. He's everything a person is. Okay. So if you have two persons who love each other, you just got to ask, what's in the way? What's in the way?
I'm thinking more of like, as a society who's gone through, going back to that pandemic and global trauma, one of the main things you would say is denial. Denial is in the way. And so almost practicing this communication with God is accepting what truly is already happening and has happened. So overcoming denial and then being present to what the true comfort is that we seek, which is from Jesus. And so practicing communication with the true comfort instead of coping. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting from.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Overcoming fear, cynicism, because the cynicism is protecting you. What's it protecting you from? Well, it's protecting you from disappointment. Yeah, exactly. So just being honest about that, right? Being honest about that.
Are there ways then that you would encourage people then to move from disappointment? I mean, so many questions. Are there ways to move somebody, or for, again, the Bible is full of y'alls. If pretty much every you is a y'all in the New Testament, which is just crazy to me, and my mind is being blown by that at the moment. So how does this, so Chris is an example. I mean, I would say I've had moments of hearing the voice of God, not audibly, just this like, I think this is what God might be saying. And there are many things that I've been wrong with as well. But how would you help a person like Chris or any of us take the next step in just being curious about what if it's actually true that he's still speaking? Yes.
So three thoughts. First off, he obviously speaks in a ton of ways. He is so playful. He'll speak to you through something written on a cereal box. He will speak to you through music, through movies, through, So like he is communicating all the time through all sorts of venues. So let's broaden the scope a little bit because it'll help us get into hearing the actual voice of God.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we talk about hearing the actual voice of God, I don't mean audibly like you're hearing me right now. It is internal. Okay. You hear it internally. The second thing is the two-way communication takes place through the heart. So if your heart is not something that you are tuned into, if your heart is not something that you are present to, it will be more difficult. So I would say tune into your heart. Just begin, set 5 minutes aside each day. Just take 5 minutes where you don't have any media, your phone's on airplane mode. You're just, you got 5 minutes, sit out on the back porch and just tune into your own heart. What am I feeling? What am I desiring? What am I experiencing? Because as you begin to get in tune with your heart, that is the receiver. that is how you receive the communication. Many people, most people do not live in touch with their own hearts.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so that'd be the second thing. First thing is we're going to make it really broad. You can speak to me in any way you want, Lord, as we're recovering the communication.
Yeah.
Right? And secondly, I've really got to be in touch with my own heart if I'm going to be able to hear you, because my heart is where you live. My heart is where you speak. Okay, so footnote to that. I said being in church all your life could really have damaged this, because many people have been told in their church that their heart is the problem. Right? Jeremiah 17:9, the heart's deceitfully wicked. Well, God knew that. And in the redemption of Christ, he has transformed the human heart. Your heart is good. Your heart is not evil. Okay, Jesus teaches this in the parable of the sower on the seed. The seed that fell on good soil stands for those with a good heart. This is mind-blowing for folks who have spent any time in church, right? The redemptive work of Christ has to reach the human heart. Okay, so my heart is good. My heart matters. I'm gonna be more in touch with the voice of God as it comes to my heart. And then third step to this is I would ask some really simple questions, literally like, do you love me? Do you love me?
Of God.
Yeah, ask him. And if you hear no, that that someone else is in the room. Somebody else is in the room. You have an enemy who hates your guts, right? And he's going to try and interfere with the love story. He hates the love story, right? So you ask questions like, do you love me? You ask questions like, are you with me? Okay, and you listen for simpleness to begin with. You don't ask, should I go to grad school? It's now the time to change the career. Don't ask the big stuff.
Double diamonds. Yeah. we're talking green bunny slope here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Get on the bunny slope. Get the hang of it. Put the training wheels back on the experiment.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's huge. I think that's huge. I think when I'm thinking about this, some of my skepticism comes from all the baggage of being with people that are like, oh, I just got the parking spot. God just gave me that parking spot. I'm like, maybe, but you're so certain he did. I don't know. Or, God left that piece of pizza there for me. And maybe he did.
I know.
And I think there's been so much of that it's like,
yep.
Gosh. And some of those, they got crazy bug on them. And I'm like, I don't want to be that to this world. And I don't.
Yep.
Yeah, yet, I think I've always also seen the people who've claimed God's call, and I'm like, oh, was it?
Yeah.
Or
Yes,
and,
yes.
Maybe abused the idea or thought of it as well.
So the training wheels really make sense.
Bingo, jackpot. Yes, right. It's the abuse of it that's caused most of us to go,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. People are just, I don't want to be one of those.
I don't. Baby out with a bath.
Well, it's like sex. I mean, horrible things have been done with sex.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make sex bad.
Yeah.
right? And people need a healing journey with their sexuality, but you don't just stop the story. You don't just say, well, I'm going to reject all that. Romance, intimacy, love, any of that. I'm just, no, right? Yeah, because people do all kinds of stupid stuff with it, horrible stuff with it.
Yeah.
Well, imagine this. This is the love story. This is the intimacy. This is the epicenter. The ancient war of the world is over the human heart. Everything else is a sideshow.
How do you differentiate the heart and the soul and the mind?
Yeah, right on. Okay, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. That's right. Yeah. I would say that the heart is the epicenter. Okay. The mind is given to us to protect the heart, but actually your mind as a cognitive function, it's not where you hold your deepest convictions. Jesus says, you hold your deepest convictions in your heart, knowing what they were thinking in their hearts. Yeah. Jesus said to them, why are you doing that? Right? So you hold your core convictions in your heart, right? Your brain is to help you process life and also to protect the heart. So I would say that the heart is at the epicenter of what we would call the soul. I think it's the meeting place of the soul and the spirit, but now we're getting into some pretty deep technicalities here.
But these sometimes, I mean, I studied a bunch of this stuff with not with Willard, but just of Dallas Willard's ideas of these things. And it really actually started shaping my view of God. I mean, it actually became important, and we don't need to jump onto that in this, but it is an important question.
Yeah, it is.
Because our understanding and our belief about God actually dictates how I will live my life.
Yeah, I
absolutely.
think it's interesting to tell I've had an issue of even with my kids, saying God lives in their heart and them thinking their physical.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, he can't fit in here,
Yes.
or whatever that is. And then even being able to unpack that to them.
Yes. So here's the phrase I use to help them. I say it's the deepest, truest you. Your heart is the deepest, truest you.
Yeah, we live out of the overflow of the heart. That would
Yeah, we
make
do.
sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So that if that's the deepest, truest you, it's like, I believe that these things are true cognitively.
Yes.
But if you actually want to see how what's actually in the deepest, would you say the deepest,
truest you.
Truest you.
You'll see how I actually live.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Versus what I say. I mean, it's why it's so stupid that we have all of our stuff is like, I believe. It's like belief has zero to do. I mean, the way that we see belief has zero to do with action and what actually happens. It's like this cognitive assent.
Yes.
And I think we even fight against that, even in prayer and all this stuff is like fighting against this, invite him into your heart. And that's the whole deal. Like you just invited him into your heart, but there's nothing else happening. Anyways, that's a whole nother can of worms.
Yeah.
But so where do you go with that? I mean,
okay. So earlier in the conversation, I wanted to say this, and it circled back around to this. So what we call the Christian experience, what we call a life with God, is fundamentally supposed to be deeply experiential. It is not primarily a belief system.
Right.
Okay. It is not primarily an ethical code.
Right.
Okay. It is primarily deeply experiential. We are deeply experiential beings, right? You do the stuff you love to do because you like the experience of it. You like to get on your bike, or you love skiing, or you love to play, eat, and where you like to eat and what you like to eat. You do it for the experience, right? Come on, man. This is what makes a human life.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If it was all just proposition and no experience, we wouldn't be interested in.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of eating. I like eating.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Trust me.
Okay.
Trust
all
me.
right. So this is really important that if what has gotten in the way of a rich experience of God, because it's meant to be. When John opens his first epistle, he says, what our eyes have seen, what our hands have handled, right? We want to make known to you so that you can experience it too. Like he says, the reason that we're writing you these epistles is so that you can experience Jesus just like we did.
not just believe it in some mental thing.
Yeah,
That's
right.
good.
Or
It's
just show up, to the meeting or whatever. Yeah, man.
Yeah, this might
Buying
sound-
the books right now. And
Yeah.
This might sound off topic, but I think about
What's your favorite flavor of ice cream?
Yeah,
I feel like
I think it will reveal a lot about
Yeah,
who
yeah.
you are.
No, I'm sorry, go.
I think a lot about the last few years with a bunch of my friends and new communities I've found myself in, with people who have started to what's the word, deconstruct their faith
deconstruct
and-
their faith. Yeah.
and just kind of question, is there like a possibility that that's them hearing the voice of God with certain things, of like, maybe that's not, like, when you feel it in your gut or in your spirit, that doesn't sound like that aligns with God, or whatever that might be. Is that another way of hearing God's voice? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
It could be
curious.
It could be because so you don't understand the world without understanding evil, the presence of evil, human trafficking, right? Just, the insanity of the world, right? There is evil in the world. And this is C.S. Lewis. He's like, the first time I read the Bible, Lewis said, I couldn't escape this idea of the presence of a dark power in the world that's trying to destroy the human race. Okay, so evil, Satan, the kingdom of darkness, however you want to describe that, tried to stop the revolution by killing Jesus, and it backfired terribly. He then tried it again by killing all of the apostles. It backfired. He kept trying it for a while, and then he realized, I can't stop this thing. So here's what I'm going to do. My next move is I'm going to create a brilliant counterfeit, and I'm going to warehouse millions of people in religion, but they have no experience of God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm backing up into your question.
Got it.
So when you are deconstructing a childhood religious experience, that is probably going to be really helpful, right? All that religious goo, the language, the yuck, right?
Yeah,
Frankly, yeah, man, that stuff has got to go.
Yeah.
Okay, but what we don't want to deconstruct is the reality of God, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just like surgery. There's good surgery and bad surgery. You want a good surgeon, not a bad one. There's good therapy and bad therapy.
Right.
You want a good therapist, not a bad one. There's good music. There's bad music. Okay.
And who are you deconstructing with? Who are you actually going through this thing with is so important.
Who is helping you reconstruct a healthy perception and experience of God?
Yeah.
Right? And that, I'm going to hand you something really easy with that. Nature. Go to nature, right? You want to know what God's like? Go to nature. Like the extravagance, the abundance, the lushness, the variety. It's so filled with life. It's like, holy cow. It's so unreligious, right? As soon as you feel the religious coming in, you just think of the ocean, right? Think of rivers. Think of the forest. And you go, okay, that's him because he's the artist and that's his work. So I'm going to learn a lot about him through nature, right? When I'm feeling the religious goo coming back in.
I'm just going to push one more time at something because I have a lot of time. I have a lot of friends so Chris and I walk all the time. That's how we became friends is we just started actually going on walks, not the Christian way, but actually just going on literal walks. I've heard you talk about walking as well as such a gift. And I loved that. And I was like, yes, good. John knows about this too. But it's just such a beautiful thing to walk with a human literally because there's something that happens. But I walk with a lot of guys that have a lot of trauma over like religious abuse and trauma over experience.
Yep.
So their back, and it's not really my background, but their background was like so much experience
right.
Yep.
that it was like, hell no, am I going back into the experience of God because they saw that so bastardized that it became this dirty thing that's like, I do not trust that one bit. So their deconstruction, if you will, or their untangling or unraveling or detangling, they either throw the whole thing out with a bath baby out the
Yes.
bath. So any thoughts on that? On like, what's the real experience
Yes.
versus the simulated abusive relationship with experience?
Yes. There's a couple things we have really made clear in this conversation. And one is that this is a very dangerous world. And nobody told us that growing up. This is a very dangerous world. And human brokenness can take place in even the most beautiful environments that were supposed to be life-giving. Family, sexuality, God.
Yeah.
Right?
Church, even.
Okay, yeah. So at least we can say, look, gang, that the ancient war for the human heart is serious business. You can't dink around with this. Okay, that the trauma can come in so many different ways, including through religious experience. Yeah. So for one person, they need to deconstruct their hardcore reform theology because it's totally killed their heart. For another person, they need to get out of this toxic, charismatic whoop-de-loo that they found, frankly, very manipulative.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah. But what we're all trying to do is to heal the human heart so we can have a life with God again.
A more full, realer version of God with a more full and understood and healthier version of my truest self.
Yes.
It's like the two, I mean, I guess that would be like the point in life would be how do we as a community, individuals, but in a community, see the most truest, what was your deepest, truest self
your heart
with the most deepest, truest reality of God.
Yep. Like, that's beautiful. That's a great way of saying it.
Gosh, putting those two together. I mean, I'm emotional about that.
And I think too, I just think about a lot of my friends that I've made in the last few years, who left the church and therefore feel like they have no more contact with God, but really talking to them, I feel like what they're actually doing is intentionally trying to hear the voice of God by all the questions that they're making. I'm like, I wish you didn't feel like because they say you don't have communication with God anymore because you no longer come to this building that you feel like you've lost everything. Because I really still think you're hearing the voice of God. It just might not look like what you're used to. And it would free a lot of my friends to continue to seek him without the shame or the limitation of like, but because I'm no longer this type of Christian, I don't actually talk to God anymore, which I'm like, I don't know if that's true. What if you are hearing him right now in this moment because you're asking about him and you're seeking him in a different way?
You're a really good soul.
True.
Yeah, right on. That is beautiful.
Yeah, Moy is one of our favorites for many reasons. But
called it. I told you. No. But I just every time I've met a lot of people, funny enough, through gaming online.
Yeah.
And I found an interesting community of people who would say they used to be Christian and they used to whatever it was that Christianity looked like. But when I hear them talk, I think they're more curious about who God might be today without them even knowing it because they're seeking nature. They're seeking all these other things.
Yes.
I'm like, I think you're more in tune with your heart than you used to be. And I think you're seeing more of God now, but it might not look like what Christianity would label it as.
Yeah, exactly. I guarantee you 90% of them, there's maybe a 10% that's a different story, but what they're rejecting is religion. Mm-hmm. What they're rejecting is churchianity, right? There's Christian culture and there is Jesus, and they are very different things. Yeah. But people were told, no, this is Jesus. The whatever it is, the big hair, the shouting, or the quiet, the no music, or whatever, all the weird stuff, right? Yeah. Here's what I would suggest, Moya. I would suggest you might ask them, hey, ask Jesus if he wants to start over in a new way with you. And use Jesus because he's so specific. God, I mean, what the hell? I mean,
Right.
What does that mean? You know,
It's intimate.
Yeah.
Jesus.
yeah,
is
but
intimate.
say,
Yeah.
ask Jesus if he'd like to start over in a whole new way with you.
Oof. Oof.
Wow.
Relearn how to ride that bike. Training
Right.
wheels back on.
Right.
Man, that's profound.
Yep.
Because I feel like that's what they almost want to have permission for
Yeah.
in our
Yes.
conversations. I feel like that's what they're asking for.
Yep.
Permission. And I'm like, yes.
John, we could literally go on for the next 5 hours, but we've just gone on with an hour, and we want to just respect your time. And we didn't even get to the stuff that I wanted to get to, which is so great. You know, I know you're fine with that, and I'm fine with that. But people,
Yeah, what we got to was more important.
Yeah.
Because this is the crisis that many people are living in.
for sure. Well, people, if we'll tell you in all other notes, but his work on the pandemic and suffering and young and old needing to find some healing and not just wallpaper over a hole in the wall is really beautiful. So check that out, everybody. John, thank you so much.
Yeah, man, this was awesome. I loved it.
Well, you haven't finished yet. So we have 10,000 thoughts. So it's not literally 10,000 thoughts, but this is a quick round, John. So if you feel like you need to take more than a few seconds, go back there and get one of your antler horns, your deer horns.
Your broadsword.
Your broadsword. Okay. So if you just answer these as quick as you can and as honestly as you can, and if you don't like it, just push end on your Zoom. Okay, currently reading.
Oh gosh, I'm reading a fascinating history about the Irish monks and their maritime skills. They actually discovered North America 1,000 years before anybody else.
Oh my gosh.
It was
What's that?
Irish monks.
Irish monks.
What's that book called?
Yeah, it's called the Brendan Voyage.
The Brendan Voyage. Yep, I'm reading the same one. That is so weird. That is crazy. 1,000 years before
Wow.
the monks.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
And everybody thought it was a big Irish folktale, St. Brendan and all that. And then this dude rebuilds the boat he built and takes the route he takes, and he does it.
That's
He's like, no,
awesome.
this is totally doable. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Whew. Okay, the 90s.
Had a lot of joy for me.
Had a lot of joy.
Yeah. I was in my 20s. No, I was in my 30s in the 90s.
Okay.
And so young marriage, young kids. That was a really joyful time.
Love that. What's something on your bucket list? Besides doing this podcast, you nailed it. I mean, this is like a big day for you. I know.
You know, it's really funny. Because of my worldview, I don't have a bucket list because I don't think we exchange one reality for another at the restoration. I think that the coming of the kingdom of God restores all things.
Right.
It doesn't blow up the world like the Death Star. So
right.
I'm not worried. Life goes on.
I mean, that sounds like Willard when Willard would talk about death.
Yes.
It's like I the more that I'm seeking first the kingdom of God, I don't know if I'll even know the difference.
Right. Yeah, Dallas's funny line was, he says, many people will be very surprised to realize that they have been dead for some time.
Yes, gosh. I mean, with that view, that's beautiful. I love
Wow.
that answer. Okay, well, that'll be our next podcast. Favorite place in the world?
Ooh, on a river, fly fishing.
Yeah, I think our friend went on the refuge, but I don't think you do. Have you done the refuge stuff? You bring guys on stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, we do stuff like that. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Sign me up.
Yeah, duh. Bad habit.
Oh, bad habit.
I'm not going to let you say no, because if you do, then I'm just going to have to go jump off a cliff. So go.
I'm just trying to pick which one.
Love it.
There's just too many. I dismiss people too easily. I eat way too much chocolate. I had to stop drinking red wine because that was starting to turn into an addiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Love it. Thank you.
Yeah.
That got real. Favorite podcast? Do you have a favorite podcast that you listen to, or the one you're doing?
I'm gonna name a couple just because your folks will go check them out and they're mind blowers. So I don't know if you've heard the Lord of the Spirits podcast.
Lord of the Spirits?
Yeah, Lord of the Spirits podcast. Two Eastern Orthodox scholars.
Ooh.
This was a mind-blowing podcast. Okay. These guys are smart.
Okay.
But their knowledge of antiquity and of the scripture, that sort of thing, they're fascinating to listen to. And then Michael Heiser's The Naked Bible podcast. Have you listened to Michael Heiser?
No, I've not, but I will. Okay, cool.
I mean, unbelievable.
Awesome.
Love it.
Awesome. John, thank you. You're officially done. Thank you for going overtime.
This was great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
It
really.
was great, guys. Thank you.
Okay, John Eldredge.
John
Stinking
Eldredge.
freaking Eldredge. That's what it should be.
This episode, guys.
Swish.
It's one of those episodes you have to keep listening over and over again to really let it kind of drop in.
Yeah.
The things that he was talking about.
Chris, I loved that you pushed back on.
Yeah, I think, I think about like hearing the voice of God, and I'm thinking in my head, I've never heard this like audible voice, like God from the mountain, kind of speaking to me. And I think what he was able to do is kind of bring this other perspective. So, well, it's not always this like voice, coming from heaven, but God can speak to us in all these different ways. And so it's really, really interesting to sit through that and hear what he had to say.
Would you say that you feel you have experienced I don't even know how to say this, the heart voice of God, the voice of God in the heart?
I think.
Or you kind of go, gosh, I don't know.
Language, right?
Yeah.
So maybe depend on the day and how I feel and how I quantify it with my language.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Sure. I think there are moments that can maybe only be God. Mm-hmm. But that has to be my perspective in it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, I think he talks about that too. There's a very powerful moment in this episode where he says, if you ask God, do you love me? And you hear no, that's not God's character. So there's something else saying that. And so it's almost on the flip side, how you hear God's voice and when it does not align with who God is. And so he did a lot of rethinking what listening to the voice of God might feel, sound like, what you might think it could be. And I think I know it's hard to grasp because we want answers and we want tangible things.
Yes.
But
now,
in the end, we want freedom. And I think this conversation frees a lot of people who could argue that they feel close with God, but they feel close with God when they're in nature, when they're in all these things that he talked about that are ways to connect and hear God's heart.
and I think with John, I mean, I think I would see scripture different in some ways than he does. Yet I'm so intrigued by how he sees it that it made me want to have more questions. Like he didn't come in saying, this is exactly how it is. You can't have any questions. He encouraged that, which made me kind of want to have more conversations with him.
Yep.
When so many people today are not wanting to have conversations with people because people are so rigid on all their answers that it's like, well, you can't disagree with this. You can't be curious about this because it says this in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, he talks about the tree of life and the tree of knowledge and our obsession of needing to know and how that comforts, that really we think it does. We think that's what we are seeking when we ask and are in communion with God.
Yeah.
I want answers. But really, he's like, what if you rethought that listening to God's voice would give you more life, more presence. And so that's also, I mean, how many of us are truly seeking God for just more life when really we're like, I need a solution. I need provision. It's just another way of rethinking how to hear his voice.
Yeah. And I loved how you talked about about rejecting this religion thing without rejecting the reality of God.
That's, if you're like, no, I understand, but we can't deny that there's a generation of people who love God and who hate religion right
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
and who are walking through something. Might not be your experience, might be that you've had a great experience at your church or your church experience, but there are people who have not.
Yeah,
and so
right.
they're in a place where like, yes, I needed this conversation because I still want to hear the voice of God. I think I still do, but I have a lot of hurt from the other thing I thought was God's voice.
Yeah.
And so there's some freedom in, am I allowed to rethink it? Am I allowed to say I'm still in communion with God, even though I'm not fully, okay with the local church or whatever that might be, or what I thought a Christian life was supposed to be or look like.
Yeah. I have a lot. I mean, just in all honesty, I have many things that are like self-destructive behaviors in things that I do, from small to big things. And I generally think that they're going to help me out in my life. I mean, somewhere in there. And I loved how he was talking about those behaviors don't truly comfort us.
Yeah.
And as much as I know that, there's also it's just helpful to rehear that. And and so part of the practice this week is tuning into your heart, which is take 5 minutes every day to be still and tune into your heart. Journal in quietness, on a walk. Yeah, I mean, there's that mindfulness thing that's really important. I think it's actually really scriptural, really biblical, of just mindfulness. And Christians get a little scared of that. They think it's some kind of voodoo something, but there's really a beauty in these old traditions of
Some might
mindfulness.
call it prayer.
Yes, some could call it prayer,
That's true.
but
yes.
we don't want to use that language.
No, well, okay.
Yeah.
And he talks about the heart being good and growing up thinking the heart is deceitful. And so when you start to rethink who you are in the eyes of God and how he's created you, then you start to want to have these moments. You want to start to practice being in tune with your heart because you know your heart is good and God truly is the creator of it. It's just, it's connected with so many things, but though it might feel scary, like trust that God is with you and all the things that you do when you have a motive of trying to find him and be with him.
We would love to hear your comments and your thoughts and your questions and pushback on things. So we do not have all the answers. We're just trying to figure it out with you. So we're not doing this for you. We're doing this with you. So if you have thoughts or questions or pushback, please send that in. You can write, like do little DMs in all the social
10K
mediums.
minutes.
10K
We're on
minutes.
Instagram, TikTok. You can reach out. We'll have all those links down in the description.
Yeah, we truly would love to have that because we would then love to have conversations about the things that you're questioning and you're curious about because we're doing this with you. So if you want to practice that, taking 5 minutes this week, then go for it.